Hey there, this is Brianna, and I had a few questions about what my process was like creating the new logo that I created for Sapient Productions, and so I'm making this video to kind of show you what my process looks like from beginning to end, what it takes for me to design something that I consider a quality logo in the end to a client. So what you're seeing here first is a Pinterest board that I created for Sapient Productions. I do this for almost every client for every individual project for inspiration, see what's working, what's not working, what things I could learn from other designers that could be applied to this particular project, which in this case was just a text. It wasn't a very formal design brief. It was just, hey, could you make me a snake logo? Make sure to please include a jaw, and if it could please be curvy, I think is how he described it. So I'm going to talk about how that verbiage is very important to make sure you're understanding the client's verbiage when they say curvy, that you have the same understanding, because that definitely played a lot into the overall design, and we probably could have saved some time. But anyway, so what we're looking at is a bunch of any kind of snakes that I could find on Pinterest, drawing tattoos, some of them very graphic, obviously, lots of detail, some of them not as much detail, and pretty much I started with this, and then I went over to Photoshop. Well, actually, I went to my iPad because I like to draw on my iPad, and I use the Procreate app with my Andinit Jot Touch stylus, which is a bomb. I'm all about it. And then I love the Procreate app because you can just like put it right into Photoshop. Like I literally just airdrop it from my iPad to my computer and it opens up on Photoshop. So here's my really funny sketch that I got from the inspirations from the different things. You can probably see already some similarities. I was really particularly influenced by this drawing here. I just thought it was like really cool, had something a little different, and I wanted to somehow incorporate that into the final design. So you can kind of see that I was trying to incorporate something here, and I was kind of thinking maybe since it's productions, it's like film strip related, maybe somehow this can play into there. So because this design was the most I felt like could play off of the film strip productions, wasn't just so much a snake on its own, I went ahead and moved forward with this design. So probably something before I move to the Illustrator file, probably something I could have done a little bit longer is make sure that my drawing was like super anatomically correct, because when I went later to draw this in Illustrator, that became very frustrating to fix it from that standpoint versus if I had taken more time to do a more finalized a more finalized draft, which in the sketching phase I'm usually just like, hey, I just want concepts, I just want to put it out there, see if it even looks good. And I think that works in some cases, but I definitely think doing a second pass on this would have been a really great idea before going into Illustrator. So this is the one that I eventually put into Illustrator, what you're seeing here, and I'm going to go through a little bit of a timeline, the crazy progress that this logo went through. So when I read curvy, that my friend wanted a curvy design, I interpreted this to mean that he wanted this snake that he sent me was head on. I should note that the picture he sent me was head on, so I assumed he wanted the snake to be head on. I don't know if that was a fair assumption or not, but I took it that way. And when he said curvy, I assumed he wanted it to fit in a circle or an oval of some sort. So I was using this information to make ovular, I don't even know if that's a word, and circular shapes to inform my design. So you can see here's kind of like one of my first passes that includes this, was influenced by the scales from the Pinterest board, and you can already tell that I kind of changed it a little bit because it wasn't quite so close at the bottom. And I thought, oh, well, that's kind of neat. Maybe I'll just leave it that way. And in the process of kind of like filling in these shapes, taking them away, deciding what I was going to do with these lines to make them actually look like something, I accidentally, but very happily, merged the shapes using this shape modes. I think I don't even remember which one I was trying to hit, but I ended up with this shape where it was filled in and it kind of came out like this little film strip, and I was like, wow, that was really cool. I totally wasn't aiming for that, but I love it. And then I kind of experimented like, well, what if it looks like if the film strip comes up kind of by his face, because I knew I needed to somehow, my goal with the logo was to somehow make it, well, with every logo, is to make it scalable, appear well in black and white, use as little outlines as possible. So I was trying to stay away from this. I tried to make it easily recognizable, not so many details. So I knew I was going to have to somehow outline his face, and at this point I hadn't come up with a solution for that. So I was kind of experimenting with this, and then obviously, as you can see in the next one, I went here, and I think his nose has somehow left it over on a different part of the artboard. But you can see essentially that I went for a more outlined approach. I thought that this little space made for a really good place for the name, and I thought I was headed in a really good direction. And I sent this to my friend saying like, hey, this is kind of the direction that I'm thinking. Is this at all what you were thinking? Are we headed in a good place? And this was, he didn't initially tell me that he didn't mean ovular and circular when he said that he wanted it to be more curvy. So I have a few more that are also similar to this shape in the next upcoming little timeline. But he did mention, like, he just replied in a way that was kind of like he wasn't 100% satisfied with the direction that it was going. So, but he wasn't 100% clear in which direction he really wanted it to go. So it kind of forced me to think like, okay, like really, let's get like really specific. What can we look at here? Because although like the snake shape is implied, like maybe these eyes are too demonic, or maybe there's a few too many details. I felt like just very uncomfortable, as you can see in this one, with just the whole mouth, the whole face. It was just, it was really driving me insane. It was driving me so insane. I had to call my friends and be like, how in the world do I get this face to appear? And it's like, but not give it so many details and somehow show the curve of the head of the snake. And it was just a very frustrating process, really, was the face. And this is where I say the drawing may have come in handy. But I also don't necessarily want it to have so many details, so I didn't think of it as a problem at first. So anyway, moving on, I decided, okay, just for scalability reasons, let's get rid of the sort of X factor, for lack of a better term. I didn't completely want to get rid of it because it did have that film strip quality, which is why I originally liked it. So you can see here that I kept part of it in, and I was making some progress of outlining the face without making it too much look like a drawing, because it just looks like it's being outlined. But I was still struggling with the face, and does it look enough like a snake? And it kind of looks demonic because obviously this is in red, and the eyes, like I wanted the eyes to look menacing, but I felt like the eyes just looked too demonic, and somehow the shape, even still looking at it, makes me think of a bee with fangs, and the tongue just looks weird, and I was just very frustrated at this point, and I knew some major changes needed to happen. So as you can see here, is a kind of a work in progress. I started to look at some of the drawings. I went back to the Pinterest board. I looked back at the snakes and I was like, okay, how are the snakes drawn? What do their eyes look like? What are the parts that are really bothering me? And how can I tackle these problems? So I started to build out the jaw a little bit more here, as you can see, and I created a different space for the tongue. Instead of like it coming straight from the top of the mouth, it kind of started to come from the bottom, which you can see I was sort of influenced by from this picture. It's kind of like, oh, what's this weird little thing inside of his mouth? I obviously didn't really like the way that person solved it, but I thought I could maybe learn from that, and I was feeling like, okay, this is kind of like a little bit more going in the direction that I think is good. And I can't remember if I sent an updated version to my friend of this one. I don't think I had yet, but I talked to him on the phone, and he told me that what he meant by curvy was that he really wanted these sort of edges on the snake to come like up and then down and up and down. And that's what I was missing. One of the bigger pieces, aside from obviously many, many things coming from over here, that was the thing, and the jaw that he was looking for, which this jaw was obviously just driving me crazy because I just felt like there was no good way to show the jaw until I started to make this sort of black background. And like I said, I wanted this to be as little, I wanted it to have as few details as possible, even though it was one of my more detailed logos. And just having this shape separate from this shape, separate from this shape, separate from this shape, it was just, to me, it was just too much. So as you can see here, this is actually one shape, and this is one shape. So it felt, but it's implying, just this one shape is implying the tooth, it's implying the jaw, it's implying the tongue. And that is the direction I wanted to go for more. And I started to define the face here a little bit more. And I felt like, okay, this is going in a good direction. So the eyes are a little bit maybe too cute because they're very big and they have the little white spots in them, but we're definitely making a lot of progress. And after looking at Pinterest a few more times and really studying the snake, I came to here. It's funny, the colors. I actually came to a couple other ones between here, but so pretty much I got the curvy shape. I obviously made major changes to the outline of the face, but this is all one shape. Well, right now it's grouped with the facial elements, but just this bottom part all up here and even the parts inside of here minus the tongue, they're all one shape. And so that was making me very happy. I also got the eyes to look a little bit more menacing, and the tongue was starting to take a little bit more of an interesting shape. And I could tell my friend still wasn't 100%, like he never mentioned anything about the movie reel aspect of the logo, so I was trying to I was like, maybe if I push it into the snake, it would somehow still be interesting, but maybe not be so separate either. And basically when it came to this design, I just felt like the sides of the snake were just a little bit too much like an elephant. Like I just kept thinking of elephant bar with snake face every time I saw this logo, and I was just like, this isn't working. Something needs to change. So let me zoom out and you're gonna see what my artboard really looked like when I was working on the logo, how many iterations I really had. You can see it's very, very many. And then we get to here. So pretty much I was able to take this element that used to wrap around the snake's sort of neck and wrap it up here. And that, for so many reasons, was so much better because it gives the snake this movement that comes up, around, and it looks like it almost could be a part of his head, but it also looks like it could imply the movie reel. And that's why this position for the design, in my opinion, is so much more effective. As you can see, I also changed the type for the logo. You can see the previous one over here. originally what I was thinking is that I think of movies as being very like old-timey and very traditional. I don't know, Hollywood. So I used a Baskerville, this is Baskerville typeface, and one of my good friends who I showed the logo to somewhere in that process mentioned that maybe it wasn't a good fit for this design. So I ended up with this font, which I believe is called Manly Man font, and it just seemed very appropriate for the fact that my friend is a guy, and this is a very, to me, very masculine shape and design. So once you could see what are the similarities between the last design and the one right before it is I still kept this sort of silhouette shape. A lot of the illustrative elements are similar. Like I said, I flipped this to be coming around more on this side. So to kind of like give it more depth and more, the words are escaping me, but the other thing I want to talk about is the tongue. It was fairly difficult for me to decide if I wanted to keep the tongue straight like this, almost like a frog, versus this more organic sort of out and curved tongue. And the reason why I ended up going with the more straight tongue is because of just plain cleanliness. It was so much cleaner to create these anchor points with the straightness of the straight, more frog-like looking tongue than it was for me to try to match all of the curves of the organic tongue. And I just figured that for printing purposes and for other purposes later, it would just be easier and cleaner to do a straight tongue. Yes, this logo is probably has a few more details than maybe I would normally put in a logo, but I feel like overall having this big silhouette be one shape and just having a few elements that make up of the eyes and the tongue, like very satisfying result. Thank you so much to Mary Sanchez who helped me, to Caleb Arnold who was my for sure moral support through making this logo and just helping me talk through some of my frustrations. And I hope that this was informative for designers to see like how much work and how much thought goes into creating a logo, and maybe if you're a client to kind of see like the backside of the process and how much work and how much thought goes into a designer's work. Thanks for watching.